Hey, my name is Ben Snyder. I'm the lead pastor here at CedarCreek Church. This past weekend, we launched our new series, You Matter. And it's our hope over the next 3 weeks to look at a very popular story of the prodigal son. Now, I know how schedules can be. Sometimes it's hard with sports, weekend activities, family out of town, or whatever, to make it every weekend. So it is our hope to give a little synopsis of the message as a reminder, or maybe as an opportunity for you to stay in step with what we feel like God is doing here at Cedar Creek. This past weekend, we talked about how every person in their heart wants to know that they matter. If you look through every age, every stage of life, and every culture, there's this internal hunger. I call it a low-grade refrigerator buzz that goes off inside of our heart and mind, asking the question, do we really matter? Are we significant to anyone? And when life is going great, we're not really caught up in the question because the momentum of the excitement carries us forward. But then we hit those moments where we pause and we wonder, do we really matter to anybody? To God, to the people around us? Are we really making a difference? And so in this story of the prodigal son, you see a couple of things. Now, many of you know the story. It begins with a rich father who has two sons, and the younger son asks for his share of his inheritance, basically saying, Dad, I wish you were dead, but you're not. And so graciously, remarkably, his father agrees to do that. And we focused in on how the son kind of left his home, spent his money on wild living, ended up in the pig trough, starving with nothing, spent it all, and then made the long journey home, where the best he could have was to be a slave, an employee in his father's house. Basically outlines different ways that we try to define our significance. Through reasoning, thinking about if I could just have this, whatever this is, this next thing in life, then life will feel more significant. To right now living, if I could just enjoy right now to the max, then that will be a meaningful life, which is in some ways, I called it depression in disguise. We're not really excited about the future, and so we have to live it up now. And that leads to oftentimes a rock bottom. Nobody ever says they're going to get there, but when you end up there, you ask, how did this happen in my life? And then resignation, that feeling that really the best that I can do is to be a slave or an employee in my father's house. Oh, the best that I could do is to try to just the daily grind. And when our life is spent trying to find our significance in one of those places, we always end up empty. So as Jesus is telling the story, the part that would have caught the audience, attention was the return home. Verse 20, it says, So when the son returned home to his father, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming, and filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. So the whole time, the son was trying to find his significance. His father was at home saying, you matter to me. You always have. You always will. Even when he asked for hurtful things, the son mattered to the father the same way that you and I matter to our heavenly Father. Psalm 139 says that God's thoughts about us are precious, that they outnumber the grains of sand. There are so many that they cannot even be counted. And so if we're going to begin to believe and live life differently, it begins when we have clarity on how much we matter to God, more than you could ever imagine, and when we give up trying to find our significance any other place, because it'll never satisfy. If you want to hear more, I would encourage you to download our app or follow along on the app or our website. But our hope is that we get clarity on how much you matter to God, more than you could ever imagine. When you do, it'll change the way you view everything else in your life.